Right, the now infamous RD125 air-cooled. This is featuring a couple of shots so far. It should have been done a long time ago, but it has caused us some serious headaches. So I'm going to try and go through now what we found and what we had to do to get it to actually be working again. So it came to us, the owner was getting out on rides out, and then it was just cutting out, running onto one cylinder, chucking oil out the pipes and all sorts of horrible things. So he brought it in to try and get it set up. We just thought it was going to be carbs and a few little bits of adjustment. First thing we found, we just did carbs and a basic service. In here where the oil pump is, we found the nut loose on the end of the oil pump shaft, so it was overstroking and pumping tons of oil into the engine. That explained, we had oil just pouring out of all the unions and collars here and here. So that explained that. Plus, when I test rode it, got it started and just took it quickly around the block to see what it was like, it was horrifically rich. It was running on so much petrol, it just couldn't burn it quick enough, so it was dropping onto cylinders, or dropping sort of one cylinder out and fouling up the plugs. So I thought that'd be fairly straightforward. We adjusted it, we messed about with bits. These oil lines, they were sort of rubbing and chafing, they needed adjusting. These fuel lines all needed replacing, they were sort of rock hard. But we got through most of that. And we thought, right, it rode better, it rode immediately better. Thought we'll take it up to the dyno at McAbby's. I was heading up that day one day, we'll see what it does and we'll see how it's performing. About 5 minutes into the dyno, it started to misfire really badly. It wasn't running great and we knew it wasn't right, but on road it didn't seem bad. So anyway, the owner took it, we changed plugs and it started working again. So the owner took it away. But he sort of had similar problems. It was riding initially really well. He took it into the middle of Newcastle, came away with it, and it started to misfire, then it started to drop, then it dropped a plug. So if you changed the spark plug, it would start back up again. So we thought, well, it's still running too rich. And we'd dropped everything, we'd adjusted everything to be as weak as possible. So, after a long chat with Yambits and some discussions by email, we found out that a lot of the carburettor kits for these bikes are actually wrong. It had a carburettor kit into it. Probably the wrong one for an earlier model. It's hard to see for certain exactly why, but basically inside the float ball in here there's various different types of jet. On the inlet of the carburettor here there's various different air intake jets depending on the model itself. So Carl at Yambit said what they do is they get a generic kit for these bikes and then they actually put the right parts into the kit before they sell it on, badged up correctly, with the correct needle, the correct emulsion tube and main jet, etc. So I got 2 of those kits from Yambits, put them in, and bingo, we had a bike that actually was adjustable on fueling. It was running neater, and we thought, great, we're away again. It rode really nicely, and test riding it around the block, thought, great. Took it back to McAbby's, and about 5 minutes into the dyno, we had the same issue. It ran really well for the first few runs, and then it started to misfire, and then it started to die. So we brought it back here for some really good investigation. We'd already checked the points and gaps and things like that. Now it felt like it was running out of ignition, running out of voltage to the spark. We changed the points and condenser because they were still original and they're a common fault. Then we had a look at the ignition coils, and the ignition coils were wrong. One was different to the bike, it had a crack in it and the readings were wrong. So I said to the owner, look, we need to get these changed to be correct before we can really start checking anything else. Changed the coils, changed the points condenser, had a much better performing bike. It was working for longer. But while it was doing it, I thought, do you know what? I'm just going to stick a voltmeter on it and see what it's doing. So I got a little, what we call sort of a generic voltmeter, little fly, and I just tie wrapped it in here so I could watch the battery voltage. And what it was doing, once the regulator controls the voltage level to the battery, so it should keep it at a nice sort of steady 13-14 volts while the engine's running. As soon as the regulator got hot, the battery voltage was dropping quickly, straight down through 12, 11.5, 11 volts. As soon as it got to sort of 10.5, 10 volts, you'd start to misfire and lose the cylinder. But when you came back and let the whole thing cool down, you'd kick the bike off, the generator would supply enough voltage, the regulator would keep it in control, and it would work again. And that's why we'd had the problem on the dyno. On the dyno, as soon as you get this engine hot, there's not as much fresh airflow as there is on the road. The heat from these cylinders goes straight up here, straight into this area, cooks all the components under there. We try and keep fresh air going on the dyno, but you can't replicate the road. And the regulator the original one, was just up here. and it was getting too hot. So 5-10 minutes on the dyno, we're having the same problem that we were getting within 10 or 15 minutes on the road. The regulator got too hot, failed, and just dumping all the current that was coming out of the generator straight to the frame. The battery was failing, we were losing sparks, we were losing ignition and losing voltage. So, final solution. The generator itself is okay. The regulator needed replacing, but the only ones that are available for these, Electrex World don't do one. There were new old stock 45-year-old Yamaha regulators, and I wasn't really happy on fitting on those. I thought it's just going to do it again. So I found that I could make one work off a Yamaha DTR. Originally this bike has a separate regulator and rectifier. Wrong way, there we go. And they sit under here in two components. Now I found this is a DTR single regulator rectifier. It needed some modification to work because the electrical system isn't the same. But I've modified the wiring on the regulator itself. You can always go back to the originals if a new owner wants to, if anybody wants to. And I made it work and made it wire. Put my little test voltmeter on again, went for a ride, and lo and behold, we've got good voltage. As it's riding along, it's keeping the battery up nicely, it's holding its voltage, and it's working properly for as long as you want to ride it. So then we took it back to Mick Abbey's and did what we originally planned to do on the dyno, tested it, and we got a nice 14.5 volts, sorry, 14.5 horsepower, and a really good fueling line, and the bike's running nicely, and it rides nicely on road as well now. So we've been through all sorts, we've found all sorts of issues, and that's the problem when you find things that are wrong and you put them right, you think that'll fix it. And everything we did was a step forward, but nothing actually cured it until we got that regulator rectifier sorted out. So now the owner's coming in today to pick it up. It's running really nicely. See if we can get it to start up. We've probably done 20 miles testing on it since we've sort of been doing all these voltage checks and things like that. Just settling down. I've got it on choke, so it's revving a bit high, but there we go. Got a lovely little sound. It's got Higgs-speed pipes on it, and they do sound well. They're very nice chrome pipes. Got a lovely little rasp when you're out on the road and it gets above sort of 5,000-6,000 revs. It really flies for a 125 twin, for a 1970s 125 twin. But it sounds lovely doing it. So the owner's going to come back and pick it up, and hopefully now he can get some trouble-free miles, enjoy some proper riding on it, and not be worried that after 10 or 15 miles he's going to run out of sparks. So fingers crossed. I'm sure he'll let me know either way. But yeah, we're happy that we've got on top of everything now and got it sorted out.